What's up, guys? Did you ever feel like you're always drowning in tags in Studio 5000? You're always copy pasting the same tag for every motor, pump, or a tank? What if I told you there is a smarter way to handle this? And that way is using user defined tags or UDTs in Studio 5000. Let's take your PLC's programming to the next level. Hello, and welcome back to ReddyControls YouTube channel. If you're passionate about controls and automation, you're in the right place. Today, we are diving into user-defined tags or UDTs in Studio 5000. We'll look at why UDTs are powerful and how to build them, and we'll walk through a real-world brewery example to make it fun and practical. So what are UDTs? UDTs are user-defined tags that will let you create your own custom data structure instead of making individual tags for every input, output, and control variable. You can bundle them into one tag type and reuse across your project. Once you make them, you can reuse them again and again. A good example of a PLC defined predefined tag is a timer. If you look at the timer, it has a .done bit, .enable bit, which are Boolean, and it also has .acc bit, which is the accumulator value, which is of dint, which is of a different data type, and they all bundled it together to define a data type called timer. Similarly, user defined tags can be used to create a structure which can comprise of different data types. It could be a bool or a string or a dint. All of them can be made it into one small custom data structure that we can reuse. Okay, so for the real world context, let's talk about beer fermentation. Let's make it real by imagining you are automating a beer brewing system. After brewing, the wort goes into the fermentation tank and yeast is added and it converts the sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. But here is the thing, it's a sensitive process and you have to monitor it and control the key parameters like the temperature, pressure, and the timing to ensure beer turns out just right. Now say you have 4 fermentation tanks. Each one needs the same kind of logic: a start fermentation button, a emergency vent, a temperature sensor, a carbon dioxide level, a fermentation complete status, and some interval control variables like timers or PID settings. Instead of creating 10 to 15 tanks per 10 to 15 tags per tank, we define a UDT called fermentation tag type. In this, we will include all the relevant bools and reals and integers. Now, every time we need a tank, we just create a new tag and call it tank 1, tank 2, etc. and we are good to go. Now, let's see how we do this in Studio 5000. So here, if you look at my screen, I have Studio 5000 opened up in this program. And as we talked about previously, we said we'll go to the controller tags and I'll show you a timer instruction. For example, this timer instruction, if you can see, it has a preset accumulator value, enable, and timer timing. These are Boolean type and these are dint type, and it combined everything into one structured predefined tag. Similarly, we can create a user defined tag, and the way we create user defined tag is you could right click under data types, user defined, right click, new data type, and we call it a, what do we want to call? We call it, in our example, we call it a fermentation tag. We're defining a user defined tag called fermentation tag, and we say this is a UDT to create all the tags necessary for monitoring fermentation. Okay, we'll just give that. And then we start adding members by clicking there. Now we define a button, we define a start fermentation, and it could be a bool type, and this would be a start ferment process. And then we can add one more child element called CO2 level, carbon dioxide level. So we just call CO2 underscore level. And CO2 level can be, depending on if we want it to be a percentage, we just do it like a dint, and we just say CO2 level, and we put a temperature sensor. So we want to know temperature of the tank, so we'll just say temperature, and we make a temperature as a float real, and we call it temperature of the tank. And then we have a, say we want to create some timers in here, so we'll create timer ferment time. Let's say call it a fermentation time, and we can create it as a timer data type. This is time of the fermentation. And we can say end fermentation, and we just call it bool and end signal. So this is how you can define all the elements, and you apply and say okay. Now you can see it's user defined tag called fermentation tank is defined here. Now if you want to create a new tag, or if you want to say we have 10 tanks, and for each tank we want all the information we created, we just go to controller tags, new tag, and we call it a tank 1 example. And this is ferment tank 1. And in the data type window, we can select now the user defined tag called as fermentation tank. You can see the fermentation tank, say okay. And if you want to create arrays of user defined, you could make it a dimension, and you could create 10 of these tanks in an array. Like instead of creating tank 1 as one, you could create tank 0 to 9 and just make each one an array, whichever one suits your application. So I'm just creating one tank here, and we say create. Now what we did is we created a user defined tag called tank1, which has all the child elements for start fermentation, level, temperature, fermentation time, and end fermentation. So this way, if I have 10, I could just go ahead and create tank 2, and I can call it fermentation tank, and I can say ferment tank 2. So that's how you create user defined tags and use them in your process, rather than creating 6 tags or 7 tags. This is a simple example for a tank, but each tank might have 15 parameters that we need to monitor. At that time, you had to create, if you have 10 tanks, you had to create 10 times 15, 150 tags. In this one, you could just define it one time and then make instance of each one. One thing we need to be careful is the user defined tags will occupy space in your controller memory. So only add child elements that you will be using. Okay. And the other thing we need to be careful with user defined tags is, I created this in an offline file, but once we download this to the PLC and we are online, and in future if you want to add one more tag, then you have to download the PLC, download it back to the PLC. You cannot add on the fly a child element. So I'll show you that process now. Now is that we created the user defined tags called fermentation tank, and we created 2 tanks. We'll go ahead and download. So a couple of ways you could download is, you could either use RS who here, or you could say communication who active. That will take you. If you want to learn more about how to download to the PLC, you can follow my videos on this channel. Downloading is downloading it from the PC into the PLC. So I have a IP address 192.168.1.10. I'll go ahead and download it. Go ahead and say download. So as we were talking in earlier, that user defined tags occupy space in the controller memory, but one of the disadvantages with user-defined tags is we cannot edit them. Say example, let's go open this one. So this is my fermentation tag, and I forgot to create a tag, or in future I want to add one more sensor, which is like temperature sensor 2, right? I cannot go back and edit it in online mode. So I have to go offline, add that new tag, and then download the program back into the memory. So let's see how to do that. So we go ahead and go offline here. And if I want to add one more child element, I go ahead and open the user defined tag called fermentation tag, and I can add member here called temp2, temperature 2. And we call it a real variable and call it temp2. So now, since this data type is a user-defined data type, and we already created tank 1 and tank 2 as instances of this, it's saying like, hey, whenever you do this, it will impact the other two tags. And if you have some logic which is moving into this, you have to go back and correct that. So we'll say yes, change the data type. Say okay. And now if I go back and check at tank 1 and tank 2, I have added temperature 2 down here. Okay. And it also added into tank 2. And now to reflect this, we go back and do RSU and download. One of the biggest advantages of UDTs is reusability. Once you create a solid UDT, you can export it and import it to other projects. That's a huge advantage when you are building scalable systems. And I can show you how do we export that also. So to export a user-defined tag, you right-click and just say export data type, and you could export it as a L5X file, and then you import it back into your target file, into your other program by using import. Okay, that's how you do that, import and export. Coming up in the next video, I'll show you how to write a Python script to generate UDT tags for 100 tanks, right? That would be perfect for a large scale breweries or production lines. You don't want to miss it. So that's it, guys. In this video, we showed you how to use user-defined tags, how to create them, and how to maintain them. And if you found this helpful, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and drop a comment if you want to see more hands-on examples like this. See you next time on ReddyControls.